question. What is this Yoga Sutra, which is considered the central text, authoritative text on yoga? What does it say about the purpose of yoga? Okay, so I'd like to switch and talk a little bit about that. Now, when we read this Yoga Sutra, there are many people who wrote commentaries on it. Vyasa Bhashya is very famous. Then Shankaracharya also wrote something called Yoga Sutra Vivarana. And in that he says, first comment, he says, who will practice unless they know the purpose? It's a good point, right? Why should you practice? Okay. So now I'll go back to that point. Remember I said, you want to enhance your wellness, you did a self-diagnosis as a physician that I am unwell and I need to be more well. Actually, Yoga Sutra itself gives you the diagnosis. Okay, let's find out what the diagnosis of Yoga Sutra is. So in yoga, and this goes back to Atul's point of mental fluctuation. So the baseline point is that there is a concept called vritti. A vritti is a fluctuation. So the mind is always fluctuating. One moment I'm looking at him, another moment my hand is moving. There is always some fluctuation. In the waking state, you cannot avoid any mental fluctuations, right? They exist. When you go to the dream state, also there are fluctuations. Even though they are not real objects, you fall off a cliff, you dive through something, there's still fluctuations, right? The third state we know is deep sleep. In deep sleep, there is no mental activity, but we have no memory of it. We wake up and we say, I had a good night's sleep, but you don't retain any memory of it. Now the yogis say that the state of deep sleep is very close to samadhi, in fact. But there's a difference. Imagine if one were able to be conscious in deep sleep. That would be samadhi.
I wanted to bring that comment back to your, when you said something, and I wanted to know what your thoughts when you said it. You said something about Adi Shankaracharya called that it's a, don't get dismayed by that, but it's
the ignorance, avidya.
But I think, again, my thinking is, of course the term ignorance is a bliss came from that power.
Maybe.
But what I'm saying is, I think that ignorance means you are in a state where you are disconnected from any thought, anything that is tangible. So, like you said, deep sleep, you are ignorant about everything. And you are in a bliss state.
No, I think that ignorance is slightly different. We'll come, if you bear with me, I'll come to ignorance a little bit, right? So, sorry if I threw a red herring. So, I was talking about deep sleep and samadhi. So, we realize that normally we only see these three states and the mind is fluctuating. Right? So, what do these fluctuations do? Yoga says these fluctuations have two types of fluctuations. One fluctuation is colored, another fluctuation is uncolored. They are called klesha. Klishta, aklishta. Actually, in Sanskrit, if you translate klishta, it means afflicted or tainted. But some wise people chose to use the word colored because it doesn't give you a negative predisposition towards it, right? Yogis don't want to have a positive or negative attitude towards everything. You want to have very stable, equal view attitude, right? So, we have these colors. What is this coloring? So, for instance, chocolate cake. Do you like chocolate cake? Anybody likes chocolate cake? He doesn't like chocolate cake. You like chocolate cake. Beautiful. I love it. So, there are kleshas. There are 5. So, vrittaya, panchataya, klishta, klishta. Vrittis are of 5 kinds of these fluctuations and they are either colored or not colored. So, what are these colorings? There are also 5 kinds of colorings. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So let's look at this. Let's look at raga and dvesha, they are the easy ones. Raga is attraction, dvesha is revulsion. So he likes chocolate cake, he doesn't like chocolate cake. So you see the chocolate cake, there is a mental fluctuation that takes you to the chocolate cake. You experience the chocolate cake. Maybe you eat it, right? And then yoga doesn't say the eating is wrong. The enjoyment is not wrong at all. But then you want to have the second slice. Right? So something got attached. There was in the memory of Soras of memories, there was a memory of blissful chocolate cake. It said, give me the chocolate cake again. That is a colored fluctuation. That is a raga. Dvesha is somebody screams at you, you get upset. Next time they come to scream at you, you move away. You can't take that screaming again, right? So that is dvesha. Right? So we have two fluctuations. These two fluctuations we know well. Right? The last one is abhinivesha. That is basically the nature of these fluctuations is that nobody wants them to end. Even the very wise don't want these fluctuations to end. We like them for some reason. So now let's try to put that in a cartoon. We saw these vritti, these are the mental fluctuations. These, every time you have a mental fluctuation and you perform an action, okay, it creates a deep groove in your mind called a samskara. Okay? The reason you like chocolate cake is because you liked it before. Otherwise, how would you like, if you go to a kid who has never had chocolate and give him chocolate cake, he would have an aklishta response to it, uncolored. I neither like it or I don't like it. He's never had chocolate. But the fact that you had it and you liked it means you made a deep groove in your mind. And then you want it again, and you want it again. And so that is what creates this samskaras. Right? And these are an endless cycle. If you have a samskara, you're going to have the next vritti, which is color. It's going to create another samskara, and this goes on and on. Right? So then the next piece that we learn is that this creates something called karmashaya, which is a seed stock. So you can imagine a farmer. He has a stock of seeds in a field. When you water these seeds with your consciousness, these seeds start to sprout. Okay? And there's no end to them. The cycle goes on and on and on. Because there is an endless clinging to that, to the love of the fluctuations. Right? So, those seed stocks give rise to birth, they give rise to our span of life, they give rise to experiences, and they go on and on. There's no end to them. So now this, according to yoga, is the illness. The illness is not that your leg is paining or that your mind got a little disturbed. The illness is this. That is the diagnosis in yoga. We took the great arrogant attitude that we know what is wrong with us and we're going to use yoga as a method. Nobody paused to ask, what is yoga telling us is the illness? What is its remedy? It tells you what is the illness is, it tells you what the remedy is also. So, this is the illness. The illness is, so now why is it an illness? It's kind of like you get on a roller coaster, right? The first time you go on the roller coaster, it's great. Woof, up, down, up, down. You go 10 times, what happens in the 10th time? You start to feel a little sick, okay? So once you've had a lot of these experiences, after some time you begin to anticipate, yeah, this is going to go up, yeah, it's going to go down. Okay, I want to get off. I want to be on a more stable ground, right? Or let's take, you play board games with a kid. You know, there's a game called Candyland, right? First time you play with a kid, have you noticed how involved the kid gets in the winning and losing? Right? Kid gets really excited when they win, and they really get upset when they lose. Why don't you get so excited? You've played it many times. You've seen through the game. Right? You've seen through the ups and downs. You've been through it so many times. You know at the end you've got to fold away the board and put it away. Right? It's over. Same thing. So when somebody comes to that point, then yoga is the antidote. It tells you, now this is the illness, what shall we do next? Right? And then it says, these colorings can be attenuated through meditation. Okay? So that the ups and downs will be smoothed out. Life will proceed very happily. You will enjoy. But you will also know why, wherefore you came. When the time comes to drop the body, you will not be afraid of it. Because in the yogic tradition, death is nothing but mahasamadhi. It is the ultimate samadhi. You leave the body. That's it. There is no fear. It's a state of fearlessness. And it's a state of equanimity and equilibrium. Right? And asana is just one of the first ways to get there by composing your body in a very stable position. Then you make the outermost shell very calm. Then you can proceed to the next level. You can make the vital airs, the pranas calm by doing breath control. Then you can bring the mind to calmness, the fluctuating part. Then you can bring the decisive part to calmness. And then one begins to then slowly see the workings of the mind. So yoga is actually not just the means and the end. It's also a deconstruction of all human experience. In a way, they say it is the knowledge by which everything is known. Because if you have deconstructed one experience, all experiences are the same. Everybody has the same experience. So you know, it's like having a laser beam into other people's thinking. It sheds light on all human experience. So it deconstructs all the human experience. And then once you've deconstructed it, you've understood it. So then there is nothing more. Right? So that is what the Yoga Sutra tells. Now, do you guys have any questions on this part that we went through, the diagnosis and the means and the final bliss that is the remedy to this thing? Was this fairly maybe I'll answer your point. So one of the colorings in yoga is avidya, and avidya is defined as mistaking that which is transient as eternal, okay? Mistaking that which is impure for pure, that which is painful as pleasurable, and that which is anitya, ashuchi, I have to say it in Sanskrit, anitya, ashuchi, dukkha, anatmasu, that which is not the true self. Mistaking that which is not the true self to be the true self. Atmakyati, that is avidya. So at that core, what happens is that even when you get to that core, we still think that we are different, that we are somehow this individuated consciousness. And that is what Shankara calls avidya. He says that in fact this is part of the whole consciousness. There is no difference between this individuated and the whole. So that is the last step that one still has to transcend.
Yeah, so that's where they said, soham.
Yes.
Soham.
Yes. Yes.
So sa aham.
Yes.
So you are me, he is me, this is me.
That's right.
So that's
the final.
In the one, all in one.
The final frontier.
Exactly. I mean, so that's they call the
avidya. Yes, completely. You got it. That's
so
they are on the same. Yeah. So yoga just has a different way of saying it. It gives it 4 categories. It says, so for instance, that which is transient. So if I take this life to be eternal, if I take, a nice chocolate cake to be joyous or blissful, that is considered the root forgetting. Now, that's not considered a bad thing. This is important to recognize. There's no good and bad. Yoga is somewhat amoral. It is above good and bad. There is nothing wrong in enjoyment. There is nothing wrong in having the attraction. There is nothing wrong in having, it's the nature. That's all there is to it. So the point is not to stand on a thing and say, oh, you don't do this. This is not the way at all. That is complete misunderstanding of yoga, because then you have now clung to some other concept. You are now stuck on some other mental thing, which is again a layer of ignorance. So that can be very appealing to some people who may not like religion, which is why I think yoga became very popular in the US. Is it doesn't start off by saying good and bad and things like that. But the point is not that it advocates people to behave indiscriminately. You do have to follow the yamas and niyamas, but there is no higher moral ground that you want to take in yoga. That would be foolish. Right? It is just an understanding of that's the way it is.